What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you, and yet another one that we were looking forward to this month because we were a huge fan of the last one. So today we are going over the latest offering from Fractal Generator, Convergence. This also comes out on the 7th of June on Everlasting Spew Records. This is their third full-length overall. Their last album, Macrocosmos, was an absolute banger. It was on my year-end list.
It was pretty high on mine. I think it was like number, I don't know, 6 or 4 or something. I don't remember, but it was high up there for sure.
It was definitely a number. And for those that don't know, this is, once again, death metal. Because we cover a lot of it here. But this is some absolutely, chaotic, heavy, kind of sci-fi esque horror themed death metal. It's heavy, it's chuggy, it's distant. That means he loves it.
I love it.
And we wanted to go over this one because we heard the lead off singles. We've been waiting patiently for another album, and I was really curious to see where they would go from the last one.
Again, what can I say that you don't already know? I, again, was a huge fan of the last album from this band. Macrocosmos was an amazing album, and this has everything that I personally love about death metal, chug and dissonance, and there is a heavy, heavy amount of that on this album. Just as there was on Macrocosmos, but there are some differences here.
Yeah, stylistically, again, death metal feels like that's the core of it, but there's definitely some elements of black metal, and I don't know, it's very experimental and atmospheric. I wouldn't quite call it avant-garde or anything like that. It does occasionally traipse on that in terms of some of the song structure and the atmosphere itself. But, for the most part, if you're into, Morbid Angel, for damn sure, and maybe a little bit more of the complexities of later gore guts, this would be probably right up your alley. The opening track, Cryogenian, starts off with the background hum of radiation in the universe, which I assume is what the guitars are tuned to, because, man, when the guitars come in, they are thick, they are heavy, and they are low.
Like fog creeping in the morning. Recently, I drove in some of the thickest fog I think I've ever been in. Couldn't see in front of my face. If I hadn't been so used to the route, I would have drove right past my exit to get off for work. And it's just like that. It is thick. So low that it's almost like he laid strings on the ground and just strummed on the ground. Just down here. It's deep.
As Ren would say, the guitars are tuned to F for floppy, because the strings feel like they're very loose, but man, it immediately kind of sets up the whole sci-fi vibe. It sounds like the opening of a sci-fi horror movie where you see the derelict ship and there's sirens going on and we're gonna collide with something that probably has tentacles and 40 eyeballs lurking on the rim of a black hole or something like that. And that's kind of the vibe of this. This feels very dark, like cold, dead space, but at the same time, just dense, just thick with riffs and drums and vocals. Every conceivable layer of sound is occupied by just dense guitars. At points when this band is going on and they're deep tremolos and machine gun riffs, it sounds like just very thick static.
It's definitely not without groove. Songs like Obelisk, that's about as brutal as it gets. Algorithmic Pathways is one of, bar none, I think the chuggiest songs on the record. It's not just a wall of noise. Now, granted, there is a wall of noise everywhere, but it's not without groove.
Yeah, the atmosphere plays a bigger part on this one than I think it did on Macrocosmos. And a lot of it feels like a mix of synths and samples and maybe some interesting guitar effects. There's ghostly sounding synths all over here. And that kind of gives it a little bit of a black metal vibe, but again, those sci-fi vibes, it's they have a ghost keyboardist. You remember the keyboardist being in the band? It's no, we haven't had a keyboardist in years. It was a ghost. Sorry, that was dumb. Anyway, that is the bulk of the atmosphere, these weird wailing noises in the background, and occasionally machinery, and again, static hums and such. And it builds this whole, isolated, claustrophobic sort of vibe. You are the only person alive on this ship, or are you? There are things crawling in the shadows trying to murder you. That is definitely the vibe, and it kind of keeps the tension going, because a lot of this is just suffocating. Around every corner there's another giant lurching riff, or it's just gonna chug your face off or blast beats, or then it'll just drop out for a second and then come back with something else super sinister. And a lot of that I think has to do with the riffing style in here. Like a lot of this is, like very dissonant tremolos and the kind of harmonized tremolos to make them sound even more creepy and evil, and then big, heavy, syncopated chugs. And if anything, this guitar tone was built to chug. It is so thick and so low that, I mean, honestly, I don't even know if you'd really need a bass. And I could really barely hear the bass in here anyway because the guitars kind of occupy that same territory.
Yeah.
But it is heavier than hell. And the band likes to really drone on these riffs. Like there are definitely longer passages where they stay on like a really interesting staccato riff, or they'll just kind of like start strumming and kind of making this sort of like wall of dissonance. And again, it kind of adds to the whole like creepy, unsettling vibe of this album.
And like in the background at all times, there's just kind of like a droning hum. So not only do you get that drone out of the guitar, like Ancient Civilizations, that riff drones on for days, but like in the background, between the choirs and the noise and the being lost in space and shit, there's just kind of an underlying drone throughout the whole thing, and that just kind of makes it like unsettling the whole time. Like, yeah.
And sometimes these atmospheric elements sort of just kind of jump out of nowhere. Like Ascesis has, really huge bass drops, like giant ones. But then out of nowhere, there's this weird break and transition that has what sounds like an old school alarm clock going off. Like that was the cue for the crew to get up and get the hell out of there, but they didn't get it because it wasn't loud enough because the guitars drowned out everything.
Right. And then the end of that song has bubbles?
Yeah. It was like burbling or whatever. Like, I don't know exactly like what movie to compare it to, just in terms of like all the samples, because I feel like I've been launched headfirst into the middle of like 1,000 sci-fi horror movies.
Yeah.
And I missed the beginning, the setup, like who are these cast of characters? Has anyone already died? I don't know. Why is that dog there? Is it an alien? Do we kill it? Do we burn it? No one's telling me anything.
Yeah.
But even amongst all the dissonance and heavy chugging and just kind of like growled, but kind of like in the background vocals, there's like a lot of interesting melodies that pop up. Like occasionally you get moments where it's just a straightforward sort of melodic hook, and then it sort of builds into like a more dissonant atonal sort of thing. Ancient Civilizations, Algorithmic Pathways, the title track, they all have like some really interesting and kind of unique melodies. Algorithmic Pathways in particular, there are some moments on there that I would compare to Cynic. They're like kind of brighter spots amongst the cold, dead space levels of darkness that is on this album.
Yeah, Ancient Civilizations has a kind of weird melody. I don't know if it's a piano or exactly what it is. Reminded me of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. They're trying to communicate with something. And then the piano in the end of Encephalon.
Yeah, the piano at the end of Encephalon is kind of odd because it's the only thing that really screams like very organic. Like the rest of this is, sci-fi and strange and, like technical bleeps and sweeps and creeps and all that stuff. So the piano just kind of felt weird. I mean, it is definitely haunting and creepy, so it kind of fits in that way. And the Close Encounters of the Third Kind thing, I kind of heard, but it was more like if Wes Craven directed Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and like every alien that was on board that ship was carrying a machete and wearing like the ghost face killer or whatever that hell that guy was called. I don't know. Did they ever give that dude a name?
No.
Whatever. I also like the fact that there's some like good slower tempo riffing over blast beats. Ascesis has like a really awesome chuggy part there where it's just a slow kind of like lurching kind of just groove to it, but it's blasting underneath it.
It's got that neat triplet chug in it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like interesting songwriting dynamics and like weird textures on this too. Some of this I would compare to like Blood Incantation, albeit like less proggy, and the synths are not very comparable to Blood Incantation, where theirs are definitely more, warm, more like, like kind of classic prog, like kind of Moog sounding. These are, I don't know, like they sound again like more like haunting black metal sort of vibe, but it's done with like a sci-fi flair. And for the most part, I think they work. Like they add something that kind of like pops in the background to, make it a little bit more creepy. Sometimes, I don't know, like they're just a bit too weird. Like ciphertext opens up with, it sounds like machinery of some kind, and techno-y synths.
They're definitely industrial. I don't know exactly what's happening, but it seemed a little out of place.
Yeah, and then transitions like very abruptly and very sharply into blast beats, heavy chugging, deep tremolos. It doesn't necessarily set up the song very well, and that was something I kind of had an issue with here in terms of this one compared to the last one. Macrocosmos, I think, utilized the atmosphere to build into songs a little bit better. Some of these, I feel like the atmosphere is just kind of like all over the place, and that does add to the chaotic vibe of this.
Right. Well, in Macrocosmos, I thought, too, kind of gelled a little bit more overall as far as, like, song structure. Because some of these songs, and granted, once again, while they're chuggy and heavy, I don't feel like they piece together quite well. Like the end of Algorithmic Pathways, while I really like that song, most of that song is a more, like, mid-tempo chuggy beast, and the end just comes in blazing. It's out of nowhere. There's this crazy blast beat, and everything speeds up. And I thought that was pieced kind of weird. But then a lot of these songs, too, seem to be more focused on atmosphere and creepy choirs and all that bullshit without really fully structuring a song. Like, a lot of this seems like a stream of consciousness versus a song.
Yeah, I got that big time on Cyphertext. Like, that was the one that was, I don't know. Like, I think they went hard on the synths on that one, and you get, like, a choir of ghosts, and, like, they kind of explored a lot of the different settings on the synths on that one. And I don't know, like the song, it feels kind of stitched together. Like it's a series of short stories, and there's supposed to be some like, character that is like sort of a focal point that appears in each one, but it doesn't necessarily kind of work that way. The song is just sort of manic. Like it keeps kind of flipping moods. Like there's some good melodic hooks one second, and then the next second it spirals into just absolute chaos with like weird atonal crawling riffs. And then the next second you hear like angelic synths, but they still sound creepy. It's a really all over the place song.
It's like losing cabin pressure on the ship, and it's madness and it's chaos and everyone's screaming, right? And then they gain it back, and you're like, all right, whew, that sucked. And then immediately it loses cabin pressure again. You're like, dude. And
some of the interplay on here I think is really odd in terms of like guitars and synths sort of like complementing one another. Like there's a lot of weird counter melodies between the two. And again, I feel like this was more focused on brutality and atmosphere. And to that degree, I think they do a great job. I mean, it is heavier than hell, and there's tons of atmosphere. It gives you a profoundly claustrophobic, sort of like just oppressed feeling the entire time. But it doesn't always gel together well. But when it does, it's kind of that cool disorienting effect, I guess you could say. Like this is definitely designed for people who want more atmosphere and more distance out of their death metal. And of course, some just like heavy Morbid Angel chugging. Or, stuff like Hate Eternal 2 where it's just brutal and fast. Because, I mean, the pace of this is generally pretty fast. Like the drums, while they're heavier than hell, they are kind of static. Like they kind of stick on a couple of different blast beat patterns, some double time grooves. You do get some like cool like off time patterns every now and then, but a lot of this kind of just locks on this sort of droning pace, which kind of matches up with the droning riffs.
So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. I do like this record. I definitely, again, like heavy, chuggy dissonance. When this record does hit really hard, it hits super hard. Like Obelisk, that chorus is out to run you over with the ship and then park it on your corpse. Like, it is heavier than shit. Algorithmic Pathways is an awesome song. The last track, Encephalon, has this really cool off-time pattern in it. Just makes it a little bit more memorable. It is, in fact, suffocatingly heavy, this entire album. Like, it is so dense. Just layers upon layers upon layers of noise and creepy things happening and whispering and really weird angelic choruses. And you're like, where the hell am I? And maybe that's what was going on for the record. In comparison to Macrocosmos, I mean, I said it before, I'll say it again, I don't think this gelled quite as well overall with song structure. I think, again, that this was focused more on creepy atmosphere and just plain heaviness and confusion. It's a fully immersive experience, and that's really cool, and I won't knock it on that. It's straight hellish. It is evil sounding. There's a constant drone. Like, it is just, again, so heavy, you will be crushed the moment you turn on the album. If you're a big fan of bands like Gorguts, Fossilization, Morbid Angel, Engulf, Replicant, you're probably really going to dig this. If you haven't heard Fractal Generator before, this isn't a terrible place to start, so definitely check it out.
I'm going to go with a 3.5 as well. It is maybe like a little bit of a letdown from the last one. I just feel like this one kind of went for one particular mode, and I mean, they excel at it. There's lots of Morbid Angel riffing on here, which I always love. In fact, Algorithmic Pathways, the algorithm led them directly to where the slime live, especially the end of that song. It's heavy, it's dissonant, the guitars absolutely kind of dominate this mix. Like, you can definitely still hear the drums with the vocals often get buried. And sometimes the leads kind of get buried, but there are very minimal leads. Like, this is more about like the heft of the tone. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the atmosphere, kind of just keeping you confused and on edge and a little bit kind of nervous, it excels at that. I do think it gets a little too strange for its own good at certain points, but overall it's very effective. This album is dense, heavy. I mean, this is like a collapsed star of a record. But in comparison to Macrocosmos, I just don't feel like the songs jump out as much. Like, they're more like hypnotic. They're more kind of like droning, heavy, kind of just ugly soundscapes, and of course, just bone-shattering riffs. I like all those things, but I think they kind of did it better in the first one, but that is not to say that this is a bad album at all. I actually really do enjoy it. It's kind of not what I expected following what I think is still their best album. But if you're a big fan, again, of Morbid Angel, especially later Gorguts, like Colored Sands, like there's a lot of elements from Colored Sands on there. And like stuff like Hate Eternal as well. Just very dense, thick, dissonant, ugly death metal that wants to hurl you into a black hole, into the jaws of some Lovecraftian creature that lives there so he can eat you and poop you out later. But yeah, if any of those bands sound appealing to you, definitely check this out. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel. Up in the bottom right-hand corner of our banner. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts, both new and old. The old ones are discounted, provided we have your size. And we even have hats, too. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
And as always, tons of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal, whether it be album reviews or Nick's massive collection update, because he just keeps collecting CDs, because what else is he going to do? States of Metal, Is It Metal, Is It Not Metal? There's a bunch of segments. Meshuggah's discography ranking is coming. We're probably going to film that, I think, sometime this month is the plan.
Hopefully.
So that'll be a big thing. Meshuggah has been massively influential to most of us here at Thralls of Metal, so should be a good time. Anyway, all this stuff that we keep doing, we do for you guys. The fans, the subscribers, we appreciate all of you. It's been a wild ride at Thralls of Metal, and we're just going to keep going. Yeah, we appreciate you a ton. It was awesome running into a ton of you at Maryland Death Fest. We enjoy meeting our fans and hanging out and bullshitting music, because that's what we do.
Yeah, it's all been really way more successful than I think it should have been. You guys, again, very irresponsible for subscribing to this channel. What the hell are you thinking? You're enablers. That's what you are. But we appreciate you. You guys are absolutely awesome. And with that, I'm going to thank you one more time, because you're enablers, but you're also awesome. And we will catch you later.